Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Mysterious Ice Ship. In a shocking discovery from Antarctica, what appears to be a huge ship locked in an iceberg has been spotted in satellite images. The ship appears to be about 400 feet long, totally encased in ice 100 miles from the coast. Authorities don't yet know exactly where the ship came from or how it became trapped in ice, as there are no records of a ship this size going missing near Antarctica. The vessel is a total mystery, and all we can really do is guess at what happened here. The biggest clue is that the ship looks like a cruise liner. It also appears to be completely on its side. You can even see the rows of windows from the cabins all along the hull and the smokestacks on the top of the boat. One of the wilder theories is that the boat stuck in the iceberg was from a lost Nazi base built in Antarctica nearly a century ago. More realistically, this was a ghost ship that was abandoned at sea and floated down to Antarctica. Then it tipped over, froze, and became one with a huge sheet of ice. While that is one possibility, it's also potentially just one big hunk of ice that looks remarkably like a giant ship. What do you think? Let me know in the comments. Number 9. The world's longest canyon. Underneath the Greenland ice sheet, researchers have discovered evidence of the longest canyon ever. And yes, it's even longer than the world-famous Grand Canyon. The enormous gorge goes all the way from the highest point in central Greenland to the Petermann Glacier on the northwest coast. That's a distance of over 460 miles. But researchers believe the ravine in the canyon could be even longer, going further south, deep beneath the ice sheet where scientists can't see. If the ice wasn't here blocking the canyon, it would look almost identical to the huge chasm that's so famous in Arizona. It's 2,600 feet deep at some points and up to 6 miles wide. It also has distinctive V-shaped walls and a flat bottom. Researchers say this probably means the canyon was carved by flowing water. It's not the deepest canyon in the world, as that award still goes to the Mariana Trench at 35,827 feet. But it is the longest, even beating the 308-mile-long Yarlung Sangpo Grand Canyon in China. What makes this discovery especially interesting is the answers to questions that scientists have been asking for years. Everyone has always wondered what happens to water as it melts under Greenland's ice sheet. We know that it drains into the sea instead of pooling anywhere in the middle, but now we can see that the water is collecting at the bottom of a huge canyon and then being routed directly into the ocean. There is an entire underground river channel here, covered in a seriously thick layer of ice. Number 8. Horse DNA. About a decade ago, soil samples were taken from Canada's Klondike region in the Yukon, scooped out from under a thick layer of permafrost. But instead of any scientific analysis being done to the samples, they were just stuck in a Canadian freezer at McMaster University. It wasn't until just a few months ago that researchers took the frozen soil samples out to see what they could find inside of them. And what they discovered is quite frankly shocking. These icy soil samples reveal DNA from a species of woolly mammoth and from species of wild horses that have been extinct for thousands of years. If you're wondering how animal DNA was found in the soil, it's not the same DNA you're probably thinking of. It's called environmental DNA, composed of microscopic residue left behind by a variety of animals as they move through a particular environment. By picking apart the DNA samples, scientists were able to see that animals from the Ice Age lived a lot longer than we had ever imagined before going extinct. What really shocked researchers, and indeed scientists around the world, is that the DNA present in the samples came from just 5,000 years ago. That means the woolly mammoths and the Ice Age horses, the ancestors of North American horses, were still alive in Canada alongside humans. They lived for 8,000 years longer than scientists previously thought. Number 7. Frozen Brazilian Yacht. The Mar Sem film, which in English translates roughly to Endless Sea, is a Brazilian yacht that was frozen in a solid brick of ice. The ship broke apart in Maxwell Bay on April 7, 2012. How? The yacht, which belonged to the famed Brazilian journalist and entrepreneur João Mesquita, was manned by 4 crews who were filming a documentary off the Antarctic coast when the boat ultimately capsized after being pummeled with strong winds of over 40 knots, along with waves estimated to be nearly 6 feet tall. The researchers were forced to radio for help before they all froze to death. Luckily, there happened to be a Chilean Navy base in the area. They were rescued by the Navy, though there was nothing that could be done about the yacht. It sank, but it didn't get very far. The yacht only made it about 30 feet deep before the water froze, the vessel's hull split in half, and it became trapped in ice. It made for an eerie picture, trapped beneath the surface and still clearly visible from above. The yacht's owner waited 10 months until the ice thawed and an attempt to recover the boat could finally be made. Ultimately, the time spent under the ice and the hull damage was too great to be repaired. Even once they got the ship back onto the shore, it was completely broken and beyond fixing, destined only for the salvage yard. Number 6. Dangerous gases. Rising temperatures in the Arctic are causing a change in the environment. In the black spruce forest found in central Alaska along the Tanana River, trees have been tipping over, toppling to the ground, and slowly being absorbed by a soupy bog. Where once the ground was hard-packed ice, today it's more of a sloppy swamp of rain and snowmelt. There is no denying that the world is steadily getting warmer and the permafrost in the north is thawing. One of the most horrendous things to come from all this melting permafrost is an increase in greenhouse gases. A recent study done by Alaska scientist Merritt Turetsky and his team have found that under the ice there is a lot more gas than previously thought. They have confirmed in recent years that as the ice thaws, huge bursts of gas are gushing into the atmosphere. It's a process known as abrupt thaw, with gases being released from the ice contributing majorly to the very issue causing all this gas to be released in the first place. Still, all the gas being found under the ice doesn't have nearly as big of an impact as what people are doing by burning coal and creating other emissions. Thawing permafrost is, however, expected to amplify climate change caused by humans. According to a recent report by National Geographic, the effects will be amplified by about 20%, and all because of gas under the ice. Number 5. Jewels on a French glacier. Back in 2013, a mountaineer was climbing Mont Blanc, the French glacier, when he came across a literal treasure. The treasure was stashed inside a metal box, which experts say was on board a plane from India that crashed into the mountain over 50 years earlier. The mountaineer couldn't believe his luck when he pried open the metal box and was staring at a treasure trove of emeralds, sapphires, and rubies. They were just sitting right there, the metal box half frozen in a chunk of glacier ice. In total, the treasure is worth an estimated $340,000. The mountaineer turned out to be a really good citizen as well. After he finished climbing the mountain, he handed the treasure over to the local authorities. He didn't want to steal somebody's precious gems. Additionally, if you find treasure in the mountains, French law says you have to give it to the police. And in the end, being a good citizen really paid off. 8 years after the discovery, local authorities finally agreed to split the profit from the gemstones with the climber. That's a total profit for him of $169,000. But you're probably wondering what the box of treasure had to do with the plane that crashed. In 1950 and in 1966, there were plane crashes on Mont Blanc, both of them Air India planes. Over the years, climbers have occasionally stumbled upon chunks of debris, human bodies, and pieces of luggage frozen in the ice. Authorities say the precious stones were probably from the flight in 1966, bound for New York. The crash killed 117 people, and one of them had apparently brought a whole hoard of jewels into America. What would you do if you found a box of jewels frozen in ice? Would you hand it over to the authorities or stash it away and hide it? Let me know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe before you go. We have lots more videos coming up. Number 4. Cold War fossils. Back during the Cold War, the US was busy digging out a chunk of northwestern Greenland as part of Project Iceworm. It was in 1966, a covert mission to create a nuclear base beneath the Greenland ice sheet capable of striking the Soviet Union with nuclear warheads. The project was kept top secret until decades later, And even still, it's hard to believe the US tried something so unusual. Creating a subterranean ice base sounds more like the plot of a spy movie than an actual US military project. But the mission was a failure. Project Iceworm was ultimately ended. Camp Century, the base itself, was abandoned. So too were ice core samples taken by scientists during the initial construction of the base. But the US didn't care about boring old ice cores back then, so the samples were stuffed in a freezer in Denmark and ignored for decades. Then, in 2019, a group of scientists finally investigated what the Cold War scientists had dug up, and it's really quite fascinating. The scientists found fragments of fossilized plants, life forms that bloomed millions of years ago. These plants prove that Greenland hasn't really been covered in ice for that long. Up until now, it was believed that Greenland had been covered in ice for 3 million years, but that couldn't possibly be the case. The fossilized plants show beyond a doubt that there was significant tundra-like climate on Greenland during that time, which wouldn't have been possible if the ice wasn't there. Scientists believe that at some point in the last 2.6 million years, Greenland lost its giant ice sheet, shifted to a tundra, and eventually regained its ice. Number 3. Expedition ship frozen solid. In 2014, an Antarctic expedition ship became stranded in the ice. Members of the Australasian Antarctic expedition on board the MV Academic Shokolaski got stuck for 10 days at Christmas, with absolutely no way out. They had to call in a Chinese icebreaker to come to their rescue, along with a reroute of an Australian icebreaker to help. They originally called a French icebreaker, but it had to retreat when it became clear that the ice was so thick that even it couldn't help out the ship. 52 members of the expedition were trapped until a helicopter team finally came to airlift the scientists and tourists to safety. When the ship got stuck, it was trying to make its way through clear water to a small cluster of rocky islands called the Hodgman Islands. But the clear water suddenly froze. The ice came out of nowhere and they couldn't move. By Christmas Eve, the captain realized there was no way they could get to the open water just 2 nautical miles in front of them. The ice was thick and just kept accumulating. After a few more days, open water was no longer 2 nautical miles ahead, but 20 nautical miles. That's just how fast the ice builds up in Antarctica. With almost no warning, the ship was trapped in a rapidly growing iceberg. With international help, the ship was finally freed, but it was a very close call. Number 2. Ultra-hot superionic ice. Scientists have made a fascinating new discovery involving ice. They call the discovery ultra-hot superionic ice, and it appears to be a new and mysterious phase of water never seen before. Scientists created this new form of ice by squeezing a water droplet between a pair of diamonds and then blasting it with one of the most powerful lasers in the world. See? Science is fun! The superionic ice is actually water that exists at the same pressure and temperature as what can be found at the center of the Earth. Prior to this discovery, researchers had only managed to create superionic ice for 20 nanoseconds before it dissolved. They did this by using shock waves. But by squeezing a water droplet between the diamonds and then blasting it with the laser to temperatures found inside a star, they were able to make the ice stable enough to steady. This is now the 18th phase of ice to be discovered, and one of the weirdest. Its oxygen atoms lock into place just like they normally do when water freezes, but the hydrogen atoms give up their electrons and become ions, free-flowing as a fluid. What this means is that ultra-hot superionic ice is both a solid and a liquid at the same time. It's a cube of ice with flowing hydrogen atoms inside of it. Pretty incredible, huh? Would you ever think of blasting lasers at diamond-squeezed water droplets? Didn't think so. Number 1. Mysteriously draining lakes. NASA has discovered a mysterious system of draining lakes beneath the Antarctic ice. They found 2 new lakes of frigid water between 1.2 and 2.5 miles beneath the ice on the southernmost part of the continent. What's truly strange is that these subterranean lakes fill and drain repeatedly in a cycle that scientists say could influence how meltwater flows into the Southern Ocean. And of course, the flow of meltwater from the ice is what influences currents in the Southern Ocean. affecting temperatures across the world. The lakes are located at the very bottom of the ice sheet, where the ice touches the rocky part of the Antarctic continent. Scientists believe the lakes are formed as a result of pressure and friction, and maybe even geothermal heat from below. Whatever the case, scientists only discovered the lakes because of NASA's IceSat satellite using lasers to measure elevations of the ice. As the lakes fill and then drain, the ice above rises and falls. This shows there is a lake system beneath, releasing water into the ocean. Just how much water? In January, scientists found that just one of these lakes, located beneath the Amory ice shelf in eastern Antarctica, flushed about 198 billion gallons into the ocean in just 3 days. And while this may sound kind of boring, it's actually a critical system that influences seasonal dips in temperature as cold air currents move around the world. Discovering why billions of gallons of horribly cold water are dumped into the ocean from under the ice is key in understanding how all the weather systems of our world are connected. Thanks for watching! What's the craziest thing you've ever heard of being found in the ice? Let me know in the comments below, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already. See you next time! Bye!